Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Don't Get a Therapist Yet. And today, my special guest is Michelle Hoffman, who is an international best-selling author. And a very warm welcome to you, Michelle. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. It's lovely to
Oh,
have you.
thank you so much for inviting me to share a moment of time and conversation with you and to invite your listeners in because it means so much for all of us to know that we are heard and valued and valuable and that our voice matters.
Absolutely. And your story is so powerful. And thank you so much for writing this book. It's called Life Worth Living. If you can see that, there you go. Life Worth
Life worth
Living.
living,
And
a
I know it's
practice.
one of your
Yeah.
first books,
Yeah.
but just give the audience a little bit of a summary of what you're doing, what you've done, so that they know a little bit more about you, Michelle.
Well, you when you're little and you dream of what you're going to be when you grow up and how life is going to go for you, I could not have imagined that the world brought me to this profession and this opportunity to help people attract the right relationships in their lives and release the wrong ones so that you can live to your full potential, and that's in professional relationships, personal relationships, and that includes intimate relationships. And it also is very, very relevant when you're moving through some sort of grief or trauma, or, when life took a left turn and you thought you were going straight. And suddenly, when your whole world changes and you don't know what to do next because you had planned life a specific way. And sometimes we're not given the tools on what to do as far as adversity or moving through grief and trauma. And what do we do with all of those emotions so that we can actually remember to see the light within ourselves and what we would like to do with our precious lives? Because we are given this golden, cherished opportunity to be here in this form, in this existence, and we want to live it fully to our fullest potential. So that's kind of the what I do, or the what I do, how did I get there is very different.
Yes, I think you have many different life experiences and very many different hats. And it does say some of those things in the book about what you're doing. But I think, you're known to be an author now and you've written several books. This is just your first we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
But can you just give us a brief summary of some of the other books you've written as well?
Sure. Well, let me share. I think what you were also asking, I was a portfolio manager. I worked in medical publishing for a dozen years. I became a social scientist at Stanford University in the Department of Medicine. I never saw myself as an author. What I did see myself as was an amazing partner, co-parent, member of a community, active, interested, involved with a social circle and friends and all of that. And I was really developing a life that was amazing. It was small, it was my life and my husband's life and our children's lives. And it took me longer to find the right person to, share this incredible life experience with than I thought it should. And then we found each other, and it was like, I've been looking for you my whole life. And so then it was just a matter of how are we going to enjoy life together? Because we used to be independent individuals and single. And then we got to share this abundance together and everything. I mean, life is better with good love in it, I say, because everything became more fascinating and interesting and entertaining. And even like standing in line for, whatever was more entertaining because I had my person with me. And so we built a life together and we built a home together. And then we were ready to invite children into the world. And then it was even better because we got to see life through their eyes, and that bonded us even closer. And it was all very perfect until he died. And that left me sole parent, head of household, and single. And this was not at all what I had planned. I felt like the landscape of my life that I had built over time had been scorched. And I spent a lot of time in fetal positions, soaking my pillow with tears and then rolling over and doing it on the other side, just not knowing where is the path? What do I do? There's not like there was not a program that says, here's how to deal with life and what to do and how to hold your head up high, even though everything you have designed your life to be is no longer as you thought it would be. And I realized that I was going to have to figure this out on my own. And I needed to figure it out for myself. I'm still alive. I needed to figure it out for my children. They had just lost their father. I needed to figure it out financially, emotionally, socially, because, it was a big life shift. And so I pulled together all of my professional experience, which I had a bounty of, and thought, well, what would I need to do? And so the first thing I figured out was I need to take care of myself emotionally. And so I figured out what are the emotions that I have been experiencing and what are they telling me? As if rather than to shove them away or sit stuck in them, I could use them as a guidepost. And so I would invite fear. I would invite anger. I would invite sadness. I would invite in, just pretending nothing ever happened. I would invite each emotion in. And when grief came in to have a cup of tea at the table, we had a long talk because grief is complicated and grief is ambiguous. And when you are trying to get something done, grief blurs your vision with tears. And grief slams your head against the kitchen wall, drops you to the floor, puts its foot on your neck, and prevents you from breathing or seeing your future. And even in that moment, I knew I needed to invite this very huge monster in and say, well, what are you telling me? And what grief had to share with me was a reminder of how wonderful my life experience has been up until this moment. So I thought it through and I realized how fortunate that I and my children and our community and the company he worked for and everyone that my late husband's life touched, we're all so fortunate to have had him in our lives. And there are widows and widowers who are bereaved, like myself. There are some who are relieved because it gives them a new start, but that's not my story. But even then, they have a new start. So for me, it was a matter of identifying what I hold so close to my heart and cherish so much, and then honoring that about the life experience that I and my children did get to enjoy by having my late husband in our lives. And by doing that, rather than having a hold on me, grief actually helped me move through the emotions and stand on my own 2 feet and know that I am better for having had the experience. I am stronger. I am more knowledgeable in this life experience. And even though the children didn't get to have as many social and academic advancements going through this whole journey, they did grow emotionally and spiritually. And now that they're a little bit older, we can see how that has actually catapulted them in maturity amongst their peers. So there's no right or wrong way of doing it. This is our way. And as I continue to come up with these tools to move through grief, to move through these big emotions, to move through enough energy to get out of bed and make the bed just long enough that I wasn't getting back into it. And that was enough for some days.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then I learned that I lost the one person I asked all my questions to. And one person cannot be your everything. So I came up with my emotional advisory board. And
Great.
yeah, on my
Great.
emotional advisory board, I was like, well, I used to go to my late husband for emotional support, but I don't have him anymore. Who can I go to? So I literally did this as an exercise. Who's on my emotional advisory board? And I put in two types of emotional support people because I am fortunate enough to have a couple of friends who, no matter what I say, I could just say, the sky is green or whatever, and they'd be like, yeah, it is green, and you're right, and everyone else is wrong. And not everyone has friends like that, but I am blessed to have a couple of friends like that. So I know that they will wrap their emotional loving arms around me and know that I am enough. And then when I'm ready to make a shift, I go to the second set of emotional support people, and they will say, oh, that sounds really hard. Okay, what are we going to do now? Like, bam, get over it. What are we going to do? What's the next best first step to move forward? And, sometimes when I need an extra moment, I don't go to them first.
Not,
But they will show
not
up when
yet.
I need them. And again, it's important to have the exercise of knowing who in your life do you have to tap into because we're just not as alone as we think we are. And the second set of people are subject matter experts. My late husband was a computer guy. I knew all of my computer needs would be taken care of, but now that he's gone, I need to find external support. And the subject matter experts could be financial guidance and legal guidance. It could be help with the drapes, the plumbing, the what, your car, whatever it is. Who do you go to for what? And literally going down the list helps, and writing it out helps you realize that you do have people. You're not alone. And the next category is accountability partners. Oh, I picked a big one on this one. A friend of mine said she was going to go for a half marathon. And I am not athletic like that at this time, but I said, I haven't gone to the mailbox in months. I'll join you. And she was my accountability partner. I nicknamed her Sparks because she ran always ahead of me and much faster. No surprise there, but that's all right. I told my daughter I only have two speeds, slow and not quite that fast, but I did it. I did it. So an accountability partner to help make sure that you show up. My children were my accountability partners, the dog. So the next and the last, I mean, you can create your own categories, of course, but I also had those people who would leverage their position for my success. And it was an interesting twist of fate. Here, as we were going through these troubling times, I reached out to my community because we were going under financially all the ways. And what I learned was people were very interested in hearing our story. And I didn't believe it at first until people were saying, hey, can you put me on your email list? I'm like, what? Okay. I felt like I was just sharing my trouble and my trauma and how we were getting through it. And the how we were getting through it was what was making the difference for them. Because what I heard in reflection was through my writing, they were learning how to deal with challenges in their life. And there was one in particular. We used to play a game with the children called Sad, Mad, Glad. And every night before they went to bed, when they would say one more story, and they didn't want to go to sleep, and they would do anything to stay up and keep our company, we gave them an opportunity to share what was going on with them emotionally. Would you like me to share how we play Sad, Mad, Glad?
I'd love you to share, Michelle. I'd love you
It
to share.
works. It works for every age, but this was really good for especially when they were young, and there was a lot of emotions going on. And we just ask. Did anything make you sad today? And then we shut our mouths, zip them shut. They're allowed to talk. We don't say anything. Did anything make you mad today? Yeah, my sister, blah, 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 my brother, la, 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 whatever it was. How did anything make you glad today? Then we empowered them to ask us, and they got to be the caretakers. Did anything make you sad today? Did anything make you mad today? Did anything make you glad today? And we took this as an opportunity to share what was going on emotionally. My son actually shared what was going on. He had some challenges at school, and he knew there was an appropriate time to share what was going on and during Sad, Mad, Glad. We don't parent during that time. We just listen. As the children got older, we shifted Sad, Mad, Glad because when we were done listening, we would then ask for permission. Would you like us to listen, guide, or help? And they knew that we would not hold judgment if they just said, listen. And our job was just to give them space enough to slow down their thoughts, get off their chest whatever was bothering them or whatever they were willing to share with us about their amazing day or whatever it was. And we would just listen. So active listening. Yes, yes. Oh my God, but we would hold our own thoughts. They would slow their thoughts down, speaking them out. They could hear them. They thought them through while they were articulating them. And that sometimes was enough. But what was amazing was even during the teenage years, which are, oh my God, so challenging, they often would up level to guide. And I would say, thank you for sharing what's going on with you and allowing me to give you my thoughts, ideas, and opinions. I know you're going to do what's right for you. Thank you for listening to some of the ideas I have. And if they up leveled to help, that meant I was going to be actively involved in making the whatever it was happen. So sad, mad, glad turned into would you like me to listen, guide, or help? All right. So what I was sharing was that I had started writing these emails. And I was at Stanford University at the time. And what I was hearing was that these messages were so valuable that I should be writing a book. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't write a book. I don't know how to write a book. I've never written a book. I've written a lot of business plans and I've done a lot of business writing and performance reviews and those sorts of things. This is a new thing for me. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and she said, oh, well, why don't you talk to my husband? He's written a bunch of books. This is a leverage and an accountability partner person. And I said, well, thank you, Beth, but who's your husband? And she looked at me in disbelief and she said, you don't know? And I said, no, I don't know who your husband is. It's not how I choose my friends. She says, my husband is Guy Kawasaki, the branding guru of the world, the guy who evangelized Apple Computer with Steve Jobs. And I'm like, oh, we I've met him. I just didn't know who he was. The kids have played together. So I found myself at the breakfast table with Guy Kawasaki. And I shared with him, the challenges that we had been going through and that I had come up with basically a system of how to move through grief and loss to live a full and happy life. And not only did I do it for myself, I put my kids through the process. And now they're living up to their fullest potential. And then a friend of mine who I used to go running with in high school went out for a run, had a heart attack, and died. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And as you know by now, I do know what to do. So I went to his widow and said, this is never going to be okay. I'm going to hold your hand and walk this journey with you. Let's project manage this thing. And she then very quickly, pulled the kids in her life together and, the revenue and resources and health and well-being and how to rebuild life after loss was all put back together. Now, there is no getting over the love lost. It just isn't. However, we're still alive and we need to find our path And so this is a way to do it. Um, so I was sharing that with Guy Kawasaki, and Guy Kawasaki pointed his finger at me and he says, "That's your book. Write the book." And when Guy Kawasaki says write the book, you write the book. So I did, and it became an international bestseller. And people started to reach out to me from all over the world saying, "Can you help me through this?" And yes, of course I will help you through this, but I need to go get two jobs because I've got these two kids and I, don't know what to do here and I'm looking for work. And they said, "No, this is your job." Like, ha ha ha. Just loving people and helping them, you know, become all that they can become. This is a job. This is the greatest job ever. So I now have the fortunate gift of people coming to me and I help them rebuild life after loss, after trauma, after divorce, after a significant life change, or when they want to just up level their existence. And I help them invite the right goals and the right steps and the right people into their lives and release those that are not supportive or that are, energy drainers so that you can live a full and happy life. I think I answered your question.
You answered your question beautifully, and thank you for that, Michelle. And it does give the story of how you went through such a devastating tragedy, losing your, you describe in your book, the beautiful love you had with Sean. It was just so amazing love and joy, and suddenly, your dreams and your life just suddenly are taken away from you, and how you describe beautifully in the book. How grief just sort of overtook you and just was just so amazing, like a snake, I think you said,
Yeah.
a snake or python,
Yeah.
in the bed, just engulfed you totally, and how debilitating that is because you've got to now get on with your life and you've got two young children to support, so you can't just suddenly, you know, be in bed grieving all day, could you? You just had to get up and find a way through this. So I love the way you tell your story, but you start with the shattered, don't you? And
Yeah.
how and
And
how
that is how I felt. And that was,
completely.
I think I wrote, there's a poem in there called
Yeah,
Shattered.
it was.
And I wrote that poem in one sitting. I was in bed one night. Sean was still alive, but he was on hospice. And he had gotten up to get something to eat in the middle of the night. And I heard the bull. And that sound, it was like my life just changed right there because he was not in a good enough condition to be taking care of anything. So, of course, I flew barefoot across the house and I'm going for it, across the broken glass to get him to safety. And with my feet bleeding in the shattered glass, knowing that my life had changed forever, just like this glass had changed. And there's no way of putting the pieces back together. And life has changed forever. And there's a moment in many marriage traditions where you cover a glass and you break the glass together because life will then change from being single to being in this partnership. And with the clash and clatter of that glass bowl that had crashed again, I realized once again my life has changed forever. And that I would walk across broken glass for him. And I would do it again and again and again. And there was something, I remember being young and seeing my grandparents looking at one another. There was a visceral connection between the two of them. And I'm like, that's what I'm wanting. That's what I will wait for. And when I get that level of love where you can see it when you look into one another's eyes, that's how I will know I have it for myself. And yes, that was real. And that makes living in this existence such a different experience and so worthy. so worthy. And I would walk on glass again. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of something that I also wrote about in that book. And is it called Netsuki? It's a Japanese
Yeah,
art form
yeah,
where if a teacup is broken, you can pull it together with the filaments of gold, and it is never the same. However, it is beautiful in a whole new way. And if I were to describe the my life and love I've shared, it is different and it is beautiful in a whole new way, even through grief. Yeah, you got me on that one, Wendy.
yeah. But so honest and so true and so real, this was a devastating, absolutely point in your life where, you lost the love of your life, the dream of your, and the dream. You had a dream of being growing old together, didn't you? And having just such amazing love together. And you can grieve over the loss of your dreams as well, things that you but might have been. Um, so
Yes, that is a big grief also.
Mhm.
And I think, I can grieve a real person who doesn't show up and he doesn't come and help take out the garbage or pay the bills or watch the kids or contribute in a conversation in a meaningful way. But when people go through different types of grief, whether it's divorce or the life they thought they should have had, or as you were pointing out, the relationship they thought they deserved, and all the time that has been lost, you can't recover your youth. You can't recover the years of trying for the wrong thing. And those are all very relevant as well. And if we put those gold filaments in, and say, all right, what do we want life to look like? And what do you value? Because you are valuable and you are valued. And one of the things that I see often is that people aren't living through their own value system. And so when you really think about it and figure out even just your top five values, and then when you're behaving in a way that's not in line with your value system, you'll realize that that's when we're putting up masks and being someone we're not to try and please someone else or to what we think is pleasing. I have a client who he named what he's calling a little monster. It must be adorable. A little monster just outside his head. He named it Fobu, which doesn't stand for anything. But it must be adorable, otherwise he wouldn't keep it there. And he changes his behavior based on what he thinks other people might be thinking. And he realized through our work together that they may not even be thinking that, but he's going to these great lengths to be a pleaser and to keep everyone happy. It's like he's jumping on springs, going, what if I do this? Can I do that? Will you like me if I do this? Am I acceptable if I look like that? Whatever it is. So he's not being authentic with himself in an attempt to please other people, but they haven't even expressed a thought on what it should be. So when we did an exercise and we just picked his top five core values, now whenever he makes a decision, he says, is this in line with my value system? I value family, love, stability, financial stability, adventure. And if what he's doing is not in line with those things, then he thinks twice. Um, I have a client who all she wanted was for her father to tell her he loved her. And her story was so beautiful and genuine because when she was little, he worked. And when he came home from work, all he wanted was to spend time with her. And they read books together, they went to theater together, they listened to music together. And so she grew up with this enriched life of and love for the arts and literature. And then one day he didn't come home. In fact, he started a whole new family somewhere else that did not include her or her brother or her mom. And she was devastated. But he had laid the foundation of her love for the arts and literature. So she has grown up to be very successful, celebrity status. You would know, you could know her name if I mentioned it. Um, and what she wanted really was for her father to say he loved her. Now, interestingly enough, her father did this again with the second family, and he started a third family. So let's just say perhaps he wasn't feeling lovable enough. And so he would try a new family, hoping he was lovable enough. And when she realized that he was not living a life that was in line with her value system, she then could understand. And she went to him and she could see him for who he is and appreciate what he has brought into her life and not expect anything other than the genuine, authentic self of who her father truly is. I say, a cat is a cat. Meet them where they're at, and don't expect them to be anything other than that. And it was a good thing we got her there because her father passed soon thereafter. But she had a sense of calm and connectedness, understanding who he was and what he meant to her in her life, even though the traditional words of, I love you, didn't come out of his mouth to her as an adult. So it's so valuable to understand what your value system is and to live within your value system. Otherwise, you realize you're inviting people into your life who don't behave the same way that you want to behave in your life.
Yes, and there's a therapy called ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which I don't know if you've heard of it, but it focuses very much on values and living your life according to your values, just as you described, having a value direction, and uh,
Mhm.
and, and that's how you live your life. So it's a great example of how you're absolutely right, Michelle, how important that is to people to find those values and then to live to those values and to actually have that feeling of meaningful and purpose in their life rather than being stuck in a, like you say, in a world where you're just putting so much energy into pleasing other people, even though they don't even know that you're trying to do that. I mean, it's so much energy is passed in that. But by working with that guy for him to get his values is wonderful. A
Yeah.
great way of doing that. Yeah.
Well, we adapt these strategies to make ourselves feel safe and accepted and
Yeah.
loved. I have hand signals for things. I use my hands a lot. And this one, my clients know when I do this, they know what I'm talking about. This one is the people who have supported and raised you and cared for you. They have their own backstory, and they can only bring the best that they have to give to you. And then you're here, though, in a different time with a different set of variables and a different set of goals. So, yes, we want to take everything we could possibly learn from them so that we can move forward and innovate in our lives and achieve our goals and dreams and desires. But don't get stuck here because it's a different life. And they could only bring to you what they have to bring. It's the best they have to offer. So it's a good reminder, as you were saying, to put a path together with the variables that you have in hand because you've got a different life experience and different desires to move forward.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you use a lot of metaphors and a lot of sort of hand, and that I think that really helps people to understand that, just that hand gesture about people, because so many people that I meet, do have a past of trauma or not so good parenting and everything like that. And I love the way you kind of just say that that's there, and that's the best they can do. But your job is to move forward.
Right.
That's lovely. I just want to ask you, Michelle, because you have a chapter in your book about the parenting, because
Yeah.
obviously what happened to you was not only were you just swamped with grief, crippled with the grief and everything, like the shock and everything you had to do, but suddenly you had these two little people that you had to look after. And I know you dedicate a chapter in your book. Could you just tell us a little bit more about your experiences there? I know you did the
I'm
Bad,
glad.
Mad, and Glad, which is a great one. But can you tell us a little bit more about how you coped with suddenly being a single parent?
Ooh, that one's tricky because I'm thinking of a place where I didn't cope that well, actually, because I was a Girl Scout leader, and one of my co-Girl Scout leaders told me, she took me aside one day and said, "Well, you're single now. You can't hang out with married people anymore." And I'm like, wow. Again, this is not how I choose my friends, but she was feeling threatened, um, because I was no longer married. Oh, the first time I had to say I was a widow was just, oh, the words coming out of my lips. Um, but what I realized again was, with all love, this wasn't about me because I was no threat, but it was about her and her insecurities. So it is a very different experience being a single or solo parent versus a co-parent. Um, and I mean, with her, I let her know that, of course I am no threat. I'm happy that she's happily married and that I will always be a friend to her whenever she wishes. And then I stepped away because I wasn't trying to do something that was emblazoned on her. Um, but things do change. And for the children, they have the different experience of, they don't have two emergency contacts or two people to pick them up or drop them off on activities. And I still felt that it was important for them to have, and I separate things out, large motor skill activities like running and swimming and team sports and those kinds of things to get that camaraderie. So large motor skills, fine motor skills, and this would be art, music, playing an instrument, playing in with a group as well as on your own. Again, getting that community in there. And then so large motor skills, fine motor skills, and intellectual pursuits. And so chess and, challenge puzzle games and things like that. So I would still make sure, and their advisory boards, that they had people who would show up for them. And I had a science teacher come and have dinner with us once a week and talk about science.
Wow.
In fact, a different science teacher buddied up with my son, and the two of them would go like rock climbing and do stuff. So again, I put together their advisory board so that they could do different things and know that they still had their support structure. It just wasn't going to be from their father because he was no longer available to us. The um they felt like they were having a different life experience than their peers. And normalizing things is correct. At the same time, knowing that it's okay for them to be honest about that their life is different now that their father is gone because they are grieving too, and how to help them understand that it's not going to be over for them. They're still alive. And there was a moment where my son was just, he had had enough. He, we were sitting around talking on the floor on pillows, and he laid back and he said, "I can never love again." And I'm like, oh dear. And my heart came out of my chest for that. What, keep talking. And he said, "Well, my best friend moved away. I thought I couldn't survive it. And then the dog died. And when the dog died, one of the gifts, in quotes on that one, because some gifts are harder to take than others, one of the gifts the dog had given us was to establish a routine ceremony and tradition around loss. And so when my husband passed, the children understood what to do because we had just lost the dog. Um, So my son was saying, my best friend moved away, the dog died, dad died. I can never have another friend again because it's too painful to lose them. And wow, I feel that. And we also know I hate this quote. It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And that one stings because I'm like, hey, I didn't want to lose him. And he was a warrior. He fought to live every day. He wanted to be with us. It was worthy. And it is true, though, because it is enriching and it is worth the pain of loss. And when somebody I know has lost someone they love, I have tried very hard to come up with the words that might actually heal or console or comfort. There are none. There are none. The very best that I've been able to come up with is the depth of joy you shared together. I understand is equal to the pain of the loss, and you are valued and valuable. Keep going.
Wow,
Because
that's
then it's
deep.
sort of like, if it hurts this bad, it meant it was that good. Ah.
Mm.
So when the children got there, um, it was a little bit easier. And you know what? When you get a friend after that, or I mean, we've all, I hope, had friends that have moved away, or were so important in third grade. We were like, come sit next to me. Let's go have a slumber party, whatever it was. But now you, as an adult, you don't really know them. Nothing bad happened in those relationships. It was just you've grown differently and you've moved. Um, and it was worth it. It was worth the friendship. We are neurobiologically designed to connect. And it's so important to do it because it gives us a sense of community and acceptance and safety and depth of life experience. And so when my son, oh, maybe I could have another friend, it's like, whew, gonna be okay. And I know he will love deeply because he knows what deep love means. Um, so with the children, it's really accepting who they are, knowing that I'm the parent and they have a different set of variables and they're moving through life and making sure that they know I'm available to them. I don't take whatever challenges they're going through personally, um, because unconditional love, it's so easy to lash out at. Oh my God. I have a funny story. During COVID, during the lockdown, my son, I knew what was going on. He has a friend whose parents gave each child a nanny and tutors, and they were adventuring and doing, and we didn't have the capacity to do that. And so he fired me as his parent. And I
Thank
said,
you.
okay, I've really enjoyed the job, but thank you for the opportunity. And then he walked out of the room and he came back and he went, I just realized the magnitude of that. You're not fired. And during COVID lockdown, I was like, well, maybe you should have, just put me on hold for a little bit. And he goes, no, you need to come back and be my mom full time. And I said, nah, no, you fired me. You can't just go around firing people. I might consider coming back as a consultant for $200 an hour. And he's like, oh my God, I don't have $200 an hour. And I said, well, I'll only charge you in 15-minute increments. And he goes, yeah, but you actually put a lot of thought into what shall I make for dinner? And you go shopping and you prepare things. And then you call me to the table and we have dinner together. That could be hours. And I said, but yeah, it's only about 15 minutes for me to like go and get you and say dinner's on the table. And he's like, oh no, no, I can't put you on furlough and I can't have you consultant. I need to hire you back as my mom. And I'm like, oh no, no. And we played this out all through dinner. And my daughter saw an opportunity and she said, Mom, I understand you have more bandwidth for additional client hours. I wonder if you'd like to do facials tomorrow and we could get exercise together. I'm like, yes, yes. And my son, he's texting with his best friend And he looks at me and he goes, "What do you mean you hired, or what is it? You hired my best friend as your attorney?" Because he was texting his best friend saying, I need your help. I need to rehire my mom." And he said, "I'm sorry, client attorney privilege. She already texted me." And he says, "Okay, I do not have to worry about this. I'm going to rely on," and it was the first time I heard this. He says, "I'm going to rely on the 48-hour unconditional love clause." I'm like, "Yes, you can." You know, I will always love you no matter what. But it was hilarious. "You're fired." I'm like, "Okay." He's appreciated me more since then.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, when the parent isn't there, when when they go to university or college or whatever, and then suddenly they're on their own, then they start to realize how much the parents have learnt since they've been
Yeah,
away, how much more mature they become, and how helpful they are.
even my late husband, he was 25 years old and he was talking to his dad. I witnessed this. He's like, "Dad, you're not as dumb as I thought you were." I'm like, "Oh my God."
So
You
true.
finally figured out he's had a whole life of experience and knowledge
Yeah,
to share with you, and
yeah.
now you appreciate it.
Now you
Well
appreciate it.
done. You got there. Your prefrontal cortex is established.
It's established. Yeah,
Oh my God.
finally.
There was another one when the kids are little. This hasn't been my kids particularly, but with clients' kids. If a child is having like just emotional outburst, like you're not, no matter what you're saying, it's not getting through to them. Their brain is just flooded, and you'll know better than me on this one because of your expertise. When this is when I came up with, "Do you want me to listen, guide, or help?" Because they couldn't do anything with their amygdala just going off the rails. But we would give them any simple instruction. "Do you want to sit here or sit there? Name five of your favorite cars," or whatever they're into. Any, logical thinking skill. "Do you want me to listen, guide, or help?" They have to choose one. And so that helps shift from that flooded amygdala looking for danger to executive functioning and going, "Oh, okay, I'm back. I can hear you now." So I'm trying, you were asking about the kids and all of the challenges that they had been through. And I'm like, was there anything in the book that you noted that I can expand on?
I think what you noticed was, I think the two things I picked up was how you kept your their father's memories alive. I know he wrote letters to them as well, and I think you had
Yeah, that's a good
books.
one. Yeah,
Um, and then the other one was how you sort of created new memories, and everything became a new memory.
very good.
Um, that you carried on sort of enriching and encouraging and just holding on to the adventure of life. That's the two things I picked up.
Awesome. Thank you. I'd love to speak to those. So, loving letters to the children, creating a legacy. And, I have not yet met anyone who's admitted to being immortal. Um, so I have also added to these, but when we knew that Sean was on hospice, we took time out and I put categories together of, what are big life moments that the children will want to have their parents' input. And if we're not there, what would we like to tell them? So I included things like when you graduate elementary school, junior high, high school, college, when you're having a really bad day, when your first heartbreak, when you're really mad at your mom. Oh, do you know how great it was? I knew they were mad at me. I could just print out a little letter from their dad and go here under the door. They knew I put them in blue envelopes so they know when there's a blue envelope, it's from their dad. If you're not going to listen to me, listen to him. Um, let's see, when you fall in love, when you think you're in love. Oh, when you learn how to drive. Oh, that one was so hard. I had to teach both of them how to drive.
Wow,
I
you're
learned a
very
lot.
brave.
I learned, here's what I learned, if it helps any of your listeners. Once someone has acquired a skill and they've got it, they don't want to be told how to do it again. So, like, if you said, "Hey, Michelle, good job talking," I'd be like, duh, I know how to talk. But there was a time when I learned how to talk. So if I said, "Good job staying in your lane in the middle of the lane," it was really important at first. And then when I said it, it was like I was irritating them. But I didn't know which skills they had acquired and achieved and which were like, stop at the stop sign. That was one of the harder things that I've done as a single parent. Um, so going back to legacy of love, these loving letters to the children. Also, at their big life events. So Sean had written a speech for each of their bar and bat mitzvahs, and there he was funny, and it was 220 people crying and laughing at the same time as I read this. Clearly his voice, not mine. And it was just, it was like, well, my speech was a little, almost a tough act to follow after that. But, clearly the love and pride was there. On their wedding day when they have children, and on the day that I pass and join him. And those letters they have, and they, at this point, they have access to them or they let me give them to them. But it was really profound to be able to know that they could still hear their father's voice in a way. And times have changed. Oh, first kiss, that was a good one. Um,
Oh,
so, we put all these big categories and then we filled them in. And I still do that if there were any blanks. So, but they know it's from me, not from him. My voice is different, even if I didn't tell them, but I do. And then we do create those touch point moments in life because that's what we still want. We still want the highlights and knowing that we work together as a team going through the life's challenges. And it bonds us closer. We are very open with one another. We know both my children and I, the three of us know that we are a team. And no matter what we're facing it together. And that we will always have one another until we don't. And we value one another for that. So the loving letters to the children was absolutely key. What was the other one that you were saying?
I think
Um,
they created their own support team as well, didn't they? There was you created memories for them, but they also had their own support team. Like you
yeah,
had one for you, but they had one. I think you explained that earlier.
right.
Um,
So we each have our own advisory board, and that
mm,
changes. And I'll tell you, whenever they're challenged with something, I ask them, who are your emotional support people and I mean, now they're in college, so like writing applications for college, I'm like, well, who are the people who might leverage their position for your success, who you might have an experience with? Ask them to read your application. Don't don't ask them to write it, but ask them to read it and get their feedback. Um, and knowing that they have people to go to is very grounding. It's very grounding.
mm. And there's also a therapy practice about that, which is you find your own support team. Yeah, there is. And I think what's really lovely about that is that feeling of belonging, of feeling connection that they're not on their own, even though they've got you, which is great, but they've got a bigger, wider community who are out there to support them and be there for them and have different roles as well. And the act of writing that down and actually, reminding themselves of that, I think it's incredibly beneficial and great for a young person to to
For
know that.
anyone,
Yeah.
yes. But also knowing that gratitude grows in a forward motion. So if you are thanking someone for being on their advisory board, you are also on someone else's advisory board. So it works like that. And every year I use it at the new year. I check because I've got people who will make sure that my children, if I pass today, which is unlikely, Um, there is somebody who will be in charge to make sure that the kids get through their education because I value education. There's somebody who's in charge of my physical well-being and my power of directives. And there's also somebody who will, watch for the kids and the dog. So I have people in place and they know who those people are. And every year I check, are you still good with this? And that way I know that that stability, I call it life in reverse. That stability will always be in place for them. And I also make it a point that the children connect with these people so it's not a stranger situation if they need to reach out and say, we've got a problem. We need your help. So they can reach out to these people as well.
Mm.
And yeah, it does change things when you know you've created your own community of people in your inner circle who you can trust and share what's going on with them, and knowing that you are enough exactly as you are. You don't have to be someone you're not. And if that means crying, it's crying. If that means failing, fail forward, fail fast, and let's pick you up and keep going, because you don't want to get stuck in the muck. It's just no fun. There's a time, sometimes when people do, or I do, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give myself an hour or 5 minutes, or I mean, we even talked about it in, I call it the green room before you started recording. I'm like, well, if I cry, I cry.
Mhm.
It's real. I don't
Absolutely.
plan it, but
It's real.
it,
Absolutely.
it's okay to cry.
Yeah,
And I wish that
absolutely.
my tears would come out with different colors or Skittles sparkles if it's I'm crying happy or whatever. They should indicate what's really going on.
Yeah. The point I just want to add to that, which was absolutely being authentic, and I know you're very much into that as well as part of your value.
Mhm.
Um, I like the idea of the children being advisory for somebody else as well, so they get to reciprocate, and that's quite an important role. That gives them sort of meaning and purpose as well, to think that they can help somebody else. They're not just there to be helped. They can actually develop those skills that they can actually be useful to somebody else as well. So, I like that reciprocal arrangement.
Reciprocity. Yeah, one of the things that we did, it was not long after Sean had passed. It wasn't an Eat, Pray, Love trip. It was teamwork, sustainability, compassion. And I realized that I can't be everything to these children as much as I'd like to. There's two of them and one of me. And so one of the things we had talked about doing before Sean was sick was learning to sail. And he and I did, but the kids and I hadn't. So we did a sailing adventure where they could learn to sail, and we went someplace where there's warmer water. And when you're working as a team on a sailboat, everyone has to work together. Otherwise, you're in irons or you're dead in the water or you're flapping or it's bad. So not only did the whole, that is a one way to say here we are as a team, but also getting packed and getting to the airport and knowing the right gate to be at and knowing how to move through adventures, um, is also
Mm.
teamwork. And that no, you can't just run off because where are we gonna, how do we find you? Um, so connecting and communicating was another one. So that was teamwork. Then we went to a 1 mile island. So we learned about sustainability. And the kids wanted to go on an adventure that my late husband and I had been on. So I was walking the journey without him, which was a little like ooh, for me, but it was the first of many steps I've taken walking the journey without
Mm.
him. And knowing I had the kids and that they got to share that was wonderful. And we, on this 1 mile island, they have all kinds of, you know, renewal experiences where they're preserving the island. But the most impactful one, was the desalination process. And my sweet son, he's a brilliant, brilliant young man, very creative. And he was listening on how they desalinated the water for use with the people. And he stormed off mad. We were like, what is the problem? He was very mad, very, very mad. And he finally got the gumption up to turn around and say, I thought I invented desalination. I'm like, well, you came to it on your own, and there is tremendous value to that. Like Wendy, I've got to say, there's tremendous value to being validated. The ways that I help people through these things are traditional and very experienced and authentic and real ways that professionals do this sort of thing. And they have, and it's taught. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, he did not invent desalination, but I like his creative mind. So that was teamwork, sustainability, and compassion. All along the way, we had brought toys that we had collected from neighbors and schools. We brought good used clothes, over-the-counter medications, and books and school supplies. And we were in a developing country and we shared these everywhere we went. And this is a reminder that no matter how low we might feel, someone else can benefit from what we have to share with them. And again, that goes to gratitude grows in a forward motion. Oh gosh. We were gifted 3 days on a cruise ship for all of us to get away together. And it was such a tumultuous time getting ready and getting there. And we were in the dark in this tiny, tiny room on a cruise ship. And I was thinking about how grateful I am for all the people who showed up for us, who went out of their way for us, who gave and shared their bounty with us. And I say it, if someone has a lemon tree, they give us lemons, but we don't ask the person with the lemon tree for something they don't have. Um, People shared if they were, rides to school or activities. If they already had a dog, they could walk our dog with their dog. So we had a tremendous support system through such a challenging time. And I try to see where the bounty is and, receive that. I was a giver more than a receiver. Now I know how to receive as well. So here I am in the dark thinking, oh, I'm so grateful too. And I literally itemized everyone in my mind for all the gifts and the bounty they had been sharing with us to help us. And it went just like this. I wonder what I could do to give back. And then I heard a booming voice from the dark. Woo! This is your captain speaking. So it wasn't actually God. But I'm telling you, sometimes
Close
I
to,
wonder.
close to, not far off.
This is your captain speaking. We have a guest in critical condition and we need blood donated. So if you have X type of blood and you're willing, would you be willing to share? And I mean, I couldn't get there fast enough because it was an answer to my question of how can I give back? You often can't give back. You can give forward. And so evidently we saved that person.
Wow.
And I have no idea who they are. They don't know who I am, but that was a way that I could give forward. Another way I give forward is through this book that I have written and how I feel so honored that it helps people rebalance life and find meaning again and knowing the value that you have and that you can make a difference in the world. And it can be so fun doing it, even with, the shattered teacup with the gold threads. We may never be the same.
It's a
And
great
my
metaphor.
my broken heart wasn't something that someone could see as a
Mm.
disability. And so they didn't look to me like they expected me to be challenged in a way. And over time, I don't need them to only see me as being widow and having loss. I People will see me as being whole, exactly as I am.
Michelle, thank you so much for sharing. so many amazing stories and philosophy of life, and so enriching as well. And I really do hope people buy the book, because although it is written for widows and single parents, there is so much in it. If anybody's experienced sort of a terrible loss or grief or tragedy. So Life Worth Living by Michelle Hoffman. I'm just going to put it up again if people can see that. So
Yeah,
it's not
it's
there you go.
Hoffmann, and it's sold on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Life Worth Living, a practical and compassionate guide to navigating widowhood and soul parenting, which is appropriate for everyone,
Mm.
not just widows and soul parents,
Yeah.
that for sure. And I'm very, very glad that I get to share this time with you. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Wendy.
Michelle. Thank you so much. I just want to mention that those notes will be in the show notes as well. How to contact you, they will be in the details as well. So if they miss it on the thing, they'll be able to catch you, or just Google your name, and I'm sure lots
Yeah.
will come
And
up.
if any of your listeners would like to go to my website at theartofrelationshipping.com, at theartofrelationshipping.com, you can click speak with Michelle, and I'd be happy to share some time with you. And in the resources, there's a link right to my books.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. That's a very kind offer, and
Great.
you'll probably be inundated, but thank you so much for that.
It's all worth it. Thank you, Wendy. I'm
Yes,
so honored to be here.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Mm.